Far out in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 92 million miles is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape-descended lifeforms are so amazingly primitive that two of them still think doing a podcast called Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea is a pretty neat idea. These podcasters have, or rather had, a problem, which was this. Actually, this is the solution. Hey Bryan, what's this?
Well, Jeff, this is our version of, and now for something completely different.
Yes, you are correct, sir.
It's Dirk Gently, brought to us by BBC America.
Right.
And we're going to be reviewing the first 4 episodes of Season 1.
Yes, which was 2016, I believe, correct?
Yes, I think that's correct. That's absolutely correct. Boy, I tell you, there's so much to unpack here, and I do not envy your position.
Well, it's very easy to relay the story. What isn't so easy is as you're relaying the story to make people understand that in no way, shape, or form does this sound like a Douglas Adams, Dirk Gently story.
No, and that's the first thing I kind of wanted to talk about just a little bit. I mean, this is truly a story independent of Douglas Adams, but it has a very few lines, maybe 1 or 2 little Easter eggs.
Right.
That are related to the Douglas Adams language or the Douglas Adams story.
Mm-hmm.
Our characters of Dirk Gently is the only character in the first 4 episodes anyway that's actually in any of Douglas Adams' writing.
Right. And I don't think it's even in the first 4 episodes, but his history and background is not similar to what it is of the book version.
Correct. And we don't even find out too much, as you say, in these first 4 episodes. We find out a very small bit of information about where he might have been or where he might have been most recently.
Right.
In these first 4 episodes, but it's not the history that we're familiar with. And what's interesting to me is that he's younger.
Right.
You could almost believe that this is a prequel, except that he mentions having met Thor.
Right.
Right somewhere in near the beginning. I don't know whether you put that in your notes or not. And wasn't there some other reference at that moment about his past?
There were little things. I didn't mention them because it wasn't plot relevant. It was just reminding us that's the character.
Exactly. Absolutely an offhand comment made for just the viewers who are fans of Douglas Adams' writing and the stories that were before. So if it hadn't been for that one reference, you could almost think of this as a prequel,
right,
to a Dirk Gently story, because he is much younger, as portrayed by the particular actor. And do you want to talk about the actors and actresses and stuff?
Sure, let's talk about the cast.
The cast.
Dirk is played by an actor named Samuel Barnett. He is the complete opposite of the description that Douglas writes out in the book. He's thin, he's younger, he doesn't wear a hat. Like you were saying, it does look like it could be a prequel, except for those couple of references. I don't know why this had to be Dirk Gently. It could have been a detective novel or a detective show with any name.
Yeah, because the only thing that they really pull pretty heavily from is the idea of a holistic detective. And or they actually have a couple of characters in this particular show, in these first 4 episodes anyway, that are referenced as being holistic. So that piece of datum or whatever is about the only one that comes from Douglas Adams.
I don't want to disagree with you that this book is big in the holistic detective agency thing. But for me, there was a difference, and it's a shade, it's semantics, it's whatever. In the book, I think Dirk had more control over where he was going and what he was doing. And in this, he's just going there. There's another character that we're also going to meet who is very similar to him and was in the same program he was in, that doesn't even try to do anything on her own.
Right, exactly. And no, I don't think you're disagreeing with me at all. I think we're on the same page, actually, when it comes right down to it. They gave lip service to the concept, but in this particular story, at times, Dirk is just living the holistic thing. He's just letting it all happen, letting it all go forward. And as you said, the other character in here described as holistic is completely holistic. You know?
Yes.
So, no, I agree with you. It's like they needed that piece of language or that piece of concept in order to be Douglas Adams, air quotes as I hold them up in front of you here.
Yes.
But they don't really attach too much of Dirk's character from the book to the character that's in this episodic television show.
Right. So that was kind of what I was thinking while watching this whole thing, is they could have changed holistic detective to some other term very similar, and everybody could have gone, wow, what a ripoff of Douglas Adams. But
yeah,
a bad ripoff would have been better than this, watching this going, but this isn't Dirk.
You know, it's funny. Yeah, you're right. It isn't Dirk. I'm excited about this series. It's funny. I know that's what we're here for. I know we're here to promote Douglas Adams and his works and that kind of thing. But I remember watching this show. I remember liking this show. Unlike the Dirk character as we know him in Douglas Adams' books, he's a likable character.
Yes.
The acting in this show, the BBC America show, is quite a bit stronger than in the BBC version that we talked about last time. Mm-hmm. So there's some actual believable acting going on in here that I really enjoyed. And the character development, although not Douglas Adams by any stretch of the imagination, I found to be intriguing and interesting. So I do feel, and that's why I mentioned right at the beginning, this is something completely different. This isn't really Douglas Adams. This is a TV show with Douglas Adams taglines, maybe, and
right.
A reference to his written work.
Yes. And I guess I don't want to give the opinion that the show isn't any good, because it's an excellent show. The show is very good. I'm enjoying it very much. I'm just trying to make sure that if you're going to go into watching this, don't expect to see the character that you've read about.
Exactly. Fair warning for all those involved. And the other main foil in the story is a gentleman by the name of Todd.
Yes. And there is one other cast member that we didn't mention, and this is something that I live with now on a daily basis, which is a little black kitten that has the soul of a hammerhead shark. So
right.
yes.
Did we? Well, you know, we didn't mention the kitten, but we also didn't mention that Todd's played by Elijah Wood.
Oh, we didn't. Is he somebody special?
Gosh. Well, of course. In fact, I know I mentioned before that I had a couple of different observations about the actors in the show. But I think it's a little better if I can maybe relate some of them as we go along in the story, as we meet them in the story.
Okay, yeah.
So other than Elijah playing Todd and Samuel Barnett playing Dirk, we're going to introduce ourselves to the other characters as they come on stage.
Okay. And there are some good ones.
Oh, there are some excellent ones.
So we'll start with episode 1, which is titled Horizons. And this is the closest they come to actual Douglas Adams work.
Right.
Dirk is awakened by a ringing phone, and it appears to be a client asking him where it is because it's time. And Dirk lies and says he is on the way.
Right.
And then they cut to a panning shot of the most horrific, bloody, multiple homicide in a hotel room I've seen in a while.
Pretty graphic and pretty disturbing.
Yes. It includes burns and large bite marks on the ceiling. And then they show a tiny black kitten walking through the carnage, and somebody picks it up. And that's when they go into opening credits.
Right. And I mean, I guess we're going to be allowed here because you and I had a quick conversation when we started watching these shows, and we talked about the complications in the plot. If you're interested in watching this show and being surprised by all the elements, maybe you skip to the end. But I feel strongly that we need to expose elements as they happen so that people can follow the story a little better.
Okay, yes.
As you mentioned, the kitten has the soul of a hammerhead shark.
Yes. Yes, it does. But you don't know that now.
Oh, no, not at all.
Another thing that I was kind of surprised by, and I don't know why this happens this way in a lot of different TV shows, but we do not hear Dirk introduce himself as Dirk for quite a while.
That is true of almost every single character in this program. In fact, it's not until episode 3 that I can identify a couple of the characters by name.
Right.
And I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. And it's certainly not in this first episode. Well, as you go into it, we don't know the names of the characters, and they don't tell you the names.
No.
So it's a very odd thing that happens in this particular story. But again, just because we want the continuity of the story, I think we ought to use the names when we know them.
Yes.
Even though we learn them much later in the story.
So as I'm summarizing this episode, one of the things that I noticed is that if there's 3 plot lines happening that will all come together at the end, they jump between plot lines. So you see little snippets. I'm just going to basically tell you as it happened. So it's going to be a lot of jumping non sequiturs seemingly, but that's just the way it was in the show. And I guess if you're having trouble keeping it straight, then make notes. Because trying to take something that happened later and put it up, it gets a little bit confusing. So I'm just going to lay it out almost how it happened. There are a few times that I condensed some things, but for the most part, I just did it as it happened.
You got it.
So after the credits, we meet Todd and Todd's landlord, Dorian. And he is out of his mind, and he is in an out-of-control rant, and he is destroying Todd's car, screaming about wanting his rent money, and Todd says he paid him yesterday.
I love it.
Todd was locked out of his apartment during that whole ordeal, so he had to climb up the fire escape and come in through the window. And there's a news report on the TV about a missing girl, Lydia Spring.
Right.
So this whole series right now, this whole season, is looking for Lydia Spring.
Right.
Todd works in a fancy hotel. Because his car was destroyed, he had to take a bus to work. And out of the bus window, he sees a corgi dog walking down the sidewalk. At the hotel, he asks his manager for an advance on his check so he can pay his landlord. And his manager brushes him off and sends Todd to room 745 because of a disturbance involving a drunk. And then he has to go to the penthouse to make sure everything is okay, since they've had a do not disturb sign up for too long. So Todd took the manager's master key because he lost his. So in Douglas Adams style, there's so much in that paragraph that you kind of need to remember for the whole rest of the series. So they did keep that part of it.
Right.
So when Todd gets to room 745, he hears yelling, and a man leaves the room right as he was about to knock on the door.
Right. And if we can pause just a moment here, I do want to introduce this character. The gentleman who walks out of the door, we later learn is a man, and this is one of those names we didn't get until episode 3.
Yeah.
His name is Nathan.
Yep.
And he's played by Kevin Smith.
Okay.
And if you know Kevin Smith, he's like immediately recognizable these days because every Hallmark television show that's ever been produced has him as one of the main characters. So he's like Mr. Hallmark character, and you barely get a look at this guy. I mean, it's a fraction of a second.
Yes.
But it's also integral to the plot to notice him.
I also believe this guy played in one of the Stargate series. And the other thing about Kevin Smith that I've always found funny is he looks a lot like Ted McGinley, who is known as the sitcom killer. Like, he's on the last season of every canceled sitcom.
Oh my, you should see, when you look at his Wikipedia page, I mean, there's hundreds of shows on here. Yes, you're right. Stargate Atlantis, Stargate SG-1.
Okay. Yep.
Oh man, he's just everywhere. So he's an immediately recognizable American actor. But again, in this particular scene, you see his face on the screen for maybe 4 frames.
Yes.
As he's running out of this room, and there's a distraught young lady on the bed.
And actually, as I was watching this, I paused it, rewound it a little bit, and stopped it as that happened because I'm thinking, I'm going to need to know who this guy is later. And that he was the one that was in the room. But they did not give you a good look at him.
No, they did not. They did not. But again, it's only because my wife's a devoted Hallmark fan that I would have recognized him, because he's like glued in my memory. I know he's been in all these other shows, and I'm sure that I would have recognized and seen him in these other ones, but Hallmark is where I currently know him.
So after Nathan leaves, there's a lady crying on the bed who Todd consoles for a bit. And then he leaves, and he's on the way to the penthouse. But for some reason, the elevator door opens on the 18th floor, and you hear the word time machine, and then Todd is watching another version of himself having an argument with another person who's out of eyesight. And this is the first of much foreshadowing.
He's wearing a shaggy white jacket at the time, and a graphic t-shirt.
Yes. So he continues to the penthouse, and lights flicker in the hall, and he finds a partially singed Fast Choice Lotto ticket on the floor with the numbers 7, 4, 5, 15, 0, 1. Now, I've got problems with this lottery ticket.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you ever bought a lottery ticket?
Oh, yes.
It could be Lotto, it could be the Mega Millions, it could be Powerball. But the one thing they do after you pick your numbers and they type them in the machine is they print out the numbers in numerical order.
Okay.
Not how you pick them. Because this just so happens to be the exact order that the numbers appear.
Oh. See, now
when the balls are drawn.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not how a ticket works.
Right, exactly. That's
ticket would be 0, 1, 4, 5, 7, 15.
Right.
Not the way they have it.
Interesting. I didn't think of that, but interesting.
Is that your way of saying get over those little details?
No. No, I just didn't think about that. It's been a long time since I bought a lottery ticket, so I wouldn't have even realized that was the case. In fact, since I already won the lottery about, oh gosh, now it's been over 20 years ago. I won 5 out of 6 numbers on one of those Mega $1 Million lotteries. So I actually won about, I think it was $2,300 or $2,400 or something like that. I rarely, if ever, play the lottery again because it's like I've already been struck by lightning once, and now I've won the lottery, sort of. So what's the point?
Yeah.
I can go out in the lightning
ahead.
storm, and I can play all the lottery I want, but I'm not going to get hit by lightning or win the lottery again.
Right. So when Todd gets to the door of the penthouse, he doesn't need his key because the door is cracked open, and that's when he walks in and sees the horrific murder scene that we were shown in the beginning.
Right.
So 2 different cops, Estevez and Zimmerfield, they're from the Missing Persons Division. They arrive on the scene. Do you want to talk about Estevez and Zimmerfield?
I do. Estevez and Zimmerfield. Estevez is played by an actor named Neil Brown Jr. You may or may not know him. I know him because I watch SEAL Team again with my wife pretty consistently through all of the seasons, and he's one of the major players. And I knew when I looked at his face, I'm like, he's much younger, obviously, in the show than he was on SEAL Team. But I was haunted by my ability to recognize him. And then, of course, Zimmerfield is played by Richard Schiff, who many people would probably know as one of the major actors in The Good Doctor.
Okay.
And the Good Doctor series, of course, ended last season, but we saw him for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, however long that particular show went on. So excellent actor. Both of them have pretty good chops.
Right.
Again, the acting on this show was at a very high level, and I considered both of these gentlemen to be pretty good actors.
Right. Yes. So Estevez and Zimmerfield interrogate Todd and call him a person of interest and told him not to leave town. When Todd gets back down to the lobby area, he ends up getting fired and he cannot get his final check. So on the bus ride home, he sees a notice for the missing Lydia Spring, and once again, he sees the corgi walking down the sidewalk again.
Second time we've seen that corgi. I wonder if it means anything.
Yeah, could it? Do you think?
And again, you know, it's funny that we know Estevez and Zimmerfield. We don't learn their names until the second episode. So at this point,
but I didn't want to put 2 random missing persons cops.
I know, that's what I'm telling you. We can't tell the story without identifying who the roles are. So, yeah, I think we have to know that. But I was totally puzzled by how am I going to write my notes if I don't even know who these guys are?
I know.
But I do love the little comment that they go through where Estevez says at one point, he says, bite marks on the ceiling. And he turns to Zimmerfield, and Zimmerfield raises his eyebrows, and then that's something that becomes a running joke in the show. Yes. Estevez can't do it, but he turns to Zimmerfield every time he needs his eyebrows raised.
When Todd gets home, he goes into his apartment, and he sees Dirk halfway into his apartment coming in through the window from the fire escape. Then they have this very strange fight, kind of like a slap fight. And Dirk is trying to figure out if Todd is a clue, an accomplice, or an assistant. Mm-hmm. And after Todd confirms that his life went from boring to interesting in one day, he decides Todd is his assistant. He introduces himself as Dirk Gently, a detective, and is thrown out by Todd.
Right. I do love the scene. It's good. It's a silly little slap fight, you know. Again, good acting in this scene.
Yes. So 2 men, one with binoculars and one with a scoped rifle, are in a car watching the building and see Dirk leaving. They call him Project Icarus. The one says he has a shot, and the other has no idea what he's talking about, and he says not to take the shot. So the guy shoots anyway, and just as he shoots, Todd bends over to pick something up. the bullet ricochets around and goes through the ceiling and kills a man in the room above him who has a woman tied and gagged in a bed.
Right. And I have to tell you, that particular scene gave me some horror flashbacks.
Really?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. I don't remember. I want to say that at one point, someone suggested, I always thought maybe it was you, that I try reading Stephen King. Mm-hmm. And
Gerald's Game.
Yes, unfortunately for me, the first book I read by Stephen King was Gerald's Game.
Right, you gave me that audiobook.
Right, and after having listened to it, read it, I'm like, I am not a Stephen King fan. And if you're not aware, the story of Gerald's Game is about a husband and wife who are into a little bit of bondage for, their lovemaking or whatever, and it gets out of hand, and the husband dies out of reach while the wife is locked to the bed, chained to the bed. And
in a remote cabin.
In a remote cabin. You're right. And she knows that no one's going to know, no one's going to come and save her. And she is, wrists and ankles attached to the bed and no way to get unattached. And
in the book, she's completely naked.
Oh, okay.
So there's that aspect too. So, not only are you helpless, but you're naked and helpless and in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Dare we say, stuck under a giant rock you can't move with no hope of rescue?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but I at that moment when I was watching that scene, I wasn't thinking Douglas Adams. I was thinking Stephen King. I mean, yes. The scene is scalding red light. Mm-hmm. She's got tape over her mouth. Fortunately for her, her legs, I guess, are not actually attached, but her arms are stretched out in the bed, and she is handcuffed to the headboard.
Yes, and she's trying desperately to get away.
Right.
Now that this guy that was with her is dead on the floor for no reason she can figure out.
And again, she's trying to make a racket and nobody's paying any attention to her. And all I'm thinking, Gerald's Game. My heart's going. I'm not having a good time at that moment. But not talking about having a bad day. Next.
Yeah. So then I kind of liked this line from, I don't remember if it was Estevez or Zimmerfield, but Dirk starts to walk away, and the guy with binoculars and the rifle, they follow him. And because Estevez and Zimmerfield are keeping an eye on Todd, they see these two following Dirk. Mm-hmm. And it was Estevez. Estevez asks, is the guy we're tailing meeting up with another guy who was also being tailed by other people? So everything's connected.
Mm-hmm. You got it.
So Todd calls his sister, who we learn is sick, and tells her he will find a way to visit her tomorrow. That's it for that. Like I'm saying, there's these little short scenes that they just keep jumping. So I'm just going to jump right along with it.
Mm-hmm.
So we cut to a desolate scene on the road with a scary bald guy with tattoos on the back of his head, and he is watching a guy with a computer kind of trying to hack into a power plant.
Right. And again, here's the gentleman that I recognized, but I couldn't figure out why at first.
Okay.
This is I'm going to butcher the poor man's name, but it's Mupho, Mpho, Kaho, Koaho.
Okay.
And I was like, why do I know this guy? Where have I seen him before? I really enjoy his acting in this show. He has quite a story to tell as they go on here. And then I realized, I know. The Expanse.
Oh. Okay, I didn't put that together.
Right, and I was like, I know him from somewhere, and then I looked up his filmography, and he was in The Expanse. So I did recognize him from that. Good actors again.
Yes, yes. So a car pulls up, and a woman gets out and walks up to the bald guy, and then just totally slaughters him. She then chases after the hacker who starts to run when he sees what she did to this guy, and she catches up and calls him Dirk Gently and says he's a dead man. And the guy has no idea who Dirk Gently is.
Right. Not one clue. And, of course, here again, we don't even learn this, I think, until maybe episode 4.
Right.
If I look at my notes. Well, maybe it was late in episode 3. Her name is Bart.
Yes. And let me just put that Bart is like the greatest character ever written.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's amazing as in this character, and she plays it all the way, you know.
Yes.
And the partner, again, that we've already introduced, his name is Ken.
Yes.
And again, we don't learn their names until a couple episodes later.
Right.
And I like the fact that we can actually refer to them now as Bart and Ken.
Right. So Bart appears to be your typical bag lady. Mm-hmm. She is disheveled. She is dirty. She's out of it. She talks to herself. Her hair is a mess. There's nothing about her that is kept in any way, shape, or form.
And of course, after she kills the bald man, she is covered head to toe and face with blood everywhere.
Yes. That she doesn't do anything to try and wipe off. It's
exactly.
Just part of her now.
Mm-hmm.
So we cut back to Todd's place, and Dirk is outside when he leaves, and he's going to his sister's house, but Dirk says that he'll give him a ride because, as we remember, Todd's car has been destroyed. So Dorian comes after them, and Todd, with his guitar on his back, gets in a light blue Corvette and speeds off with Dirk. And then Dorian tells Dirk to bring him back with his money.
Right. Which is weird because, we have no reason to understand why Dirk would have any knowledge of who this gentleman was or what their relationship to Todd was.
So back at the police station, they are worried about losing the case because they're a missing person and the other was a homicide, and they're trying to say it's all connected, and they're saying, no, this is a homicide, you're missing persons. And there's a very typical, very typical back and forth banter between different police officer groups like you would see in every cop show.
Right.
They want to know if anyone found the kitten with bloody paws. They also thought that they should talk to Farrah Black again. Now, why would they bring up Farrah Black without us having any idea who Farrah Black is? Well, Farrah Black is the person that was tied to the bed.
Exactly. Which, again, we don't find... Well, her name is mentioned here. They don't say why they want to contact her or who she is, but we don't learn that it's attached to this lady attached to the bed until much later.
No, they just kind of open up a file folder and you see that she's a detective.
Right.
One of the men killed in the hotel was billionaire Patrick Spring. His death comes just days after his daughter, now an heiress, went missing. They are trying to find anything useful on the scrambled security footage. The only interesting they saw was, a corgi running through the lobby. So on the death-defying drive to Todd's sister's house, Dirk explains what a holistic detective is. He eats pizza in the car, and he almost hits a man who was crossing the street. And once again, I paused the video, and I looked at the guy thinking, I'm going to need to know who this man is sometime.
You did? I didn't think that he was important.
Yeah. Well, he is important.
So it's actually, again, here the conversation that Dirk and Todd have in the car at this point, that's one of the only sequences in the show so far that has Douglas Adams verbiage in it.
Yes.
And Dirk mentions again that he wasn't the kind of detective that goes around looking for pocket fluff.
Right. Yes. All right. So Bart and Ken are in a car, and even though she does not need gas, she has a hunch and stops for gas. She has Ken sit on the roof of the car where she can see him until she gets back. As she walks into the station, she sees that a man behind the counter has been shot dead. She pokes around looking for snacks, and the guy who shot the clerk pointed his gun at her. She immediately took his gun and killed him with it. On her way back to the car, she tells Ken she is an assassin.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy with a gun comes out of the station behind her, but she immediately kills him without even looking at him.
With the gun, she pulls a gun with her right hand out of her left rear pocket and shoots him upside down, not looking in the right direction.
Yes.
I'm sorry, with the gun upside down, not looking
Yes.
in the right direction.
Yeah.
Oh, but she does explain to Ken about her being a holistic assassin at this
Yes.
point. And one of the phrases that she used is that she lives in this synchronized chaos and things just happen around her.
Yes. So she tells Ken that she's not hired. She just goes around killing people she feels like.
Right.
If she kills them, then they were her target.
Mm-hmm.
And she has never killed the wrong person.
That's right.
So Dirk and Todd are at another gas station, and Dirk hears a loud, rumbling vehicle coming and makes Todd leave immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So Dirk and Todd arrive at Todd's sister, Amanda's house, and Todd has to do basic chores for his sister because of her condition, pararibulitis. And that causes hallucinations that you believe are real.
Mm-hmm. As Amanda's condition is very severe with her hallucinations, she basically has become agoraphobic and isn't able to leave the house. She's taking drugs that help her control the hallucination, and Todd is providing her the money that she needs and keeps her going in her home. So she hasn't left the house in what appears to be years.
Right. Dirk asks Amanda why it matters where she went if the disease was in her, and Todd asked her to jam.
The only other funny thing, there's a funny line in there, it just tickled me, is when Dirk is referring to the holistic nature of his job and how often it is that things will happen, and he says what he's really excited about is when the really unique coinky-dink actually happens.
Right. Because it takes so long to have learned these characters' names, I have referred to them mostly as binoculars and rifle.
I absolutely love it. I love it. Rifle is the dumbest man on the planet. That's
Rifle is the dumbest man on the planet. And we'll talk about that when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
Binoculars and Rifle are outside Amanda's, and Rifle has them in his sights, and Binoculars slaps him. And so this is all happening while Amanda and Todd, if you remember he brought his guitar, were jamming in the garage.
Right.
And Amanda has an episode, and she hallucinated that the drumsticks were butcher knives that she was holding by the blades, and her hands just started bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot of screaming and consoling and all of that. So then on the way home, Dirk and Todd are followed by the loud van with the Rowdy 3 painted on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Back at the apartment, Dirk tells Todd that he was hired by Patrick Spring to investigate his death 6 weeks before it happened. Todd asked if Dirk ever actually solved a case. He was told there was one about a couch and one involving Thor. So those are the two little references. And it's not even a case. The couch was something completely different.
Right.
Todd does not want to work the case. And Dirk tells him that he's got no choice now. and having no money is not an issue. The universe will provide. So the Rowdy Three, but there are 4 of them, arrive at Todd's. And they are out of control, and they just destroy everything, and baseball bats, and beat up people, and then they do some sort of energy withdrawal from Dirk. And after that, they walk away calmly and go out the window, taking a picture of Todd's sister with them.
Right. It's here that the gentleman binoculars sees the Rowdy Three's van and refers to Project Incubus.
Yes.
And we don't know what that is, and we don't really find out what that is until much later. But it's interesting.
Right. But if you remember, they called Dirk Project Icarus.
Right. 2 different projects.
Yes.
Or 2 different code names for a similar project? I'm not sure.
Right. So the landlord Dorian barges in, and he waves a gun around. And the microwave goes off, and he shoots it, and the bullet ricochets around and hits him in his own head, and he dies. So the 2 different pairs of men tailing Dirk and Todd, along with 2 FBI agents, are in a standoff on the street trying to figure out what's going on. One of the FBI was the man in room 745.
That's right.
So up above Todd's room, or Todd's apartment, is Farah, and she is crying and trying to escape. She swears to the ether that she will find Lydia. The bed breaks, and she knocks herself out and ends up on the floor. Todd was brought to the police station, and then he is let go. He was told that the FBI was watching the building because Dorian was a drug dealer. And then there's a little scene that is unrelated to everything going on with Dirk and Todd, with 2 bald guys with tattooed heads. So there seems to be a number of these people all over doing all sorts of things. They go into the hotel Todd used to work at, and they talk to the hotel manager, and they want to know if he found a kitten in the penthouse. And he said, no, they didn't, and they killed him. So after being let go from the police, Todd sees a flyer about Lydia Spring and has thoughts about turning in the lottery ticket as evidence. I'm really not quite sure what the lottery ticket evidence would be in this case, but he's got this dilemma about not wanting this lottery ticket. So he tells Dirk that he stole his rent money from Dorian, and now he has nothing and is homeless. On the bus ride home, he sees the corgi again. He gets off the bus and takes the dog to the address on the collar. The man, who was almost hit in the middle of the street earlier, answers the door, and there is a really weird, crazy-eyed girl in the house with him. It's Lydia Spring.
Right. And the man, by the way, the man's name is Gordon.
Yes.
And again, we don't find that out until another couple of episodes. But here is this Gordon, and he has a weird affectation with his voice.
Yes.
It's strange, but it's consistent, so we'll let him go on with that.
He kind of speaks in a Batman-esque voice, like he is clenching his teeth while he's speaking.
Right.
So he's kind of talking like this without moving his mouth, and it's very hard to understand what he's saying.
What was that?
Back above Todd's apartment, Farah wakes up, reaches for a saw, and somebody in the room with her steps on it. Dirk gets to his apartment and takes a black kitten out of his bag. The episode ends, of course, with Todd watching the live $10,000 midnight lotto drawing, and the numbers are 7, 4, 5, 15, 0, 1. In that exact order that was on the ticket.
And you forgot to mention that also inside Dirk's bag is a gorilla mask and suit.
Oh, yes. Yes, there is a gorilla mask and a suit. Episode 2 is called Lost and Found. So this episode opens flashing back to 2 days ago. Lydia Spring on the phone talking to Farah and telling her she needs her help. She is held at gunpoint by the man who was in the street who Todd brought the dog to. She told Farah to get her at the Ridgely building. It sounded at the end of the conversation that Lydia was going to tell her it was a trap. Farah arrives at the building and looks for Lydia. She is attacked by a couple of bald guys. She mutters to herself as she looks for a place to hide. She finds a door and talks through it. She's willing it to open. Todd is on the other side of the door and does not open it. He's looking through the peephole so he can clearly see who's on the other side. She is eventually captured, and it flashes forward to the present where she is on the floor, cuffed to the bed in the room above Todd's apartment. As she's reaching for the saw, somebody in the room with her steps on it, and it is 5 bald guys with tattoos on their head.
Oh my gosh. And all the bald guys have the same kind of limited vocabulary, dumb looks in their faces, and
yes,
they could follow orders, but don't seem to be capable of thinking very well.
No. So Estevez and Zimmerfield are in the morgue and looking at Patrick Spring's body. But his head is not there. The 2 bald guys in there were gone, recently transferred by the FBI. They are told Patrick Spring was killed by a hammerhead shark. All of this, very, very confusing to everybody on that show. Dirk and Todd are outside the house where Todd saw Lydia. Todd decided to leave, and Dirk sees the winning lottery ticket that has blood on it. Dirk uses that as evidence that Todd is doing what he is supposed to be doing. They see the man arrive home and go into his house. Dirk grabs the lottery ticket, and he and Todd sneak into the man's garage. Back with Bart and Ken, the car that they are in dies in the middle of a road going through a woods. Bart tells Ken that the car breaking down means they are meant to be there. Bart wants answers about who Ken is and why he was with the bald guy. Ken is an electrical engineer who was hired to build illegal stuff. He was on a job for the bald guys. A guy on a motorcycle approaches. Back in the man's garage, Dirk and Todd learn that the guy's name is Gordon Rimmer. He has a huge collection of memorabilia from a rock star who disappeared a long time ago named Lux du Jour. To make sure Todd helps him, Dirk crumples up the lottery ticket and tosses it in Gordon's house. Of all the stupid things that you could possibly do, that has to be way up on the top of the list.
Yep, it certainly does. That and running into the shed full of chainsaws.
Right. I don't understand how they weren't detected.
Mm-hmm.
The guy lives alone. Except, of course, for Lydia Spring, who's barking and running around on the floor.
Yes, it's at this moment we figure it all out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Here, where we learned that Lux du Jour was a character from the past, we see Lydia on the floor, and it's evident she's acting like a dog. And in fact, the first time she sees Todd, she actually licks his face and whimpers, like a dog. And at various parts of this particular scene, she drags a small stuffed animal over to Todd.
Right.
While Gordon is on the phone muttering to the gentleman that he's speaking with.
Right. They do a brief little check-in with Amanda, and remembering what Dirk was saying, she decides to go outside to smoke a joint. The Rowdy 3 van comes slowly up the street, and she runs back into the house.
Mm-hmm. So back at Gordon's house, as I said, he's on the phone, and a couple of the important things that he mentions while he's on the phone. Of course, Todd and Dirk are trying to be quiet and trying to get out of the house, and there's a whole kerfuffle going on with that. But
right.
In the conversation, Gordon mentions the animal transfer unit.
Yep.
And that he is the kidnapper, and he refers to himself as the Supreme Soul.
Mm-hmm. And he is also complaining that he was attacked at the hotel by a giraffe and a gorilla.
Which is funny, because that's a neat description of the two of the guys.
Yeah. So we jump back to the room with Farah, and the 5 men subdue and torture her for information. The questions he asks her are, of course, more foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
In the altercation, one of the men got a broken nose, so they did keep the broken nose.
Right. I was going to say, so far they've had somebody climb through a window, and they had the broken nose. So,
Yes.
those 2 pieces are still there.
Here's where we actually learn their names. The 2 FBI agents are Nathan and Weedle, and they are leaving a crime scene when they are approached by Estevez and Zimmerfield.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to know why the bodies from the Patrick Spring case were transferred. And they said it wasn't them.
Right. So we learn that Nathan is in fact an FBI agent, and his partner is Weedle.
Yes. So now we're back in the woods with Bart and Ken, and the guy on the motorcycle is taking a look at their stalled car. Ken is trying to tell the guy to leave before he is killed. Bart tells Ken a story of when she was a kid and the program she was in. She is a leaf in the stream of creation until she gets to where she needs to be, and then she is a piranha in the stream of creation. And Ken delays Bart killing the guy because the guy's helping them.
Right. He's fixing their car.
Yes.
So, there may be a slight reference here.
Yeah, that's... In Gordon's house, Lydia the dog is nosing around where Dirk and Todd are hiding. So Dirk throws the toy that she had in the other room, and it knocks over a lighted candle. Todd's phone rings, and Gordon hears it. Dirk sees he has a gun, and he throws what we learn are his business cards at him as a distraction. He grabs the dog and escapes out the window that Todd just went through.
Mm-hmm.
And as Gordon notices, his house is on fire.
And at some point here, we actually learn that the dog's name is Rapunzel.
Yes. Yes.
This is the corgi that we've seen now 4 or 5 different times.
Correct. Amanda calls Todd because the Rowdy 3 van is hanging around. She goes outside and throws a brick at it. She then has an episode where she feels she is freezing. She goes for her medication. The brick is thrown through her window with a note that says, "Hi."
Oh, and she laughs and smiles. It's kind of fun.
And then to wrap something up, Estevez and Zimmerfield go back to the morgue, and the guy that they were talking to before who said the bodies were transferred wasn't there. And the current medical examiner or coroner who was down there was not around at the time, and nobody should have been down there.
Mm-hmm.
So Nathan and Weedle see the 5 guys bringing Farah out and throw her in the back of a truck and leave. And they refuse to do or say anything. It was kind of weird. I don't exactly know why they were so non-committal on helping that woman.
Right. Well, because they were hesitant because Zimmerfield and Estevez told them that they should report to them anything that seemed odd or unusual. And that's when the FBI guys are debating about whether this was something that would be considered odd or unusual. And they refuse to report back to the local PD because, after all, they're the FBI. So why should they bother?
Still a little cold.
Yes.
So Dirk and Todd meet up, and Dirk has a theory of hypnosis to explain the Lydia dog thing.
Mm-hmm.
Dirk also explains that he is a detective because he is trying to help. He gets dragged into these situations. He has no choice. He is a leaf in the stream of creation until he finds out who killed Patrick Spring, and then it will take him somewhere new. So we learn that Dirk and this character Bart are very similar in their existential ways.
Exactly.
So Dirk gets a text from Gordon saying that he has his friend. He shows Todd the picture of Farah and asks him if he knows her. Todd recognizes her from the peephole who he did not let into his apartment the other day.
Mm-hmm.
They want the dog or they will kill her. They want to meet at the Eastgate Bridge at midnight. At midnight at the bridge, Nathan and Weedle are surveying the situation. In the exchange between Gordon and Dirk and Todd, everybody is confused and nobody seems to have any answers. So it was kind of funny that each one wanted an explanation of what the hell was going on, and nobody got it.
Right. It was definitely an Abbott and Costello conversation. Who's on first?
Right. So Dirk and Todd think it is a prisoner exchange, and Todd walks to give the dog to Gordon. When he finds out that Farrah will not be let go, he suspends the dog over the side of the bridge. Everybody is yelling, and a blue electric face of Lydia Spring appears out of the dog and speaks to Todd. He is startled and drops the dog over the edge of the bridge. Nathan and Weedle charge the scene and start firing. Nathan is killed, and Weedle is unconscious and taken, and the dog gets away. In the woods, the man finishes fixing the car. He tells Ken he is going to take the car, put a bullet in his head, cut him up, sell the car for pieces. Ken tries to tell the guy he is the one who is in danger. Bart asks if she can kill him now. Ken says yes.
Oh my gosh.
Bart walks straight at the guy who's got this gun and is shooting at her, and she never gets hit. She takes the guy's gun and beats him to death with it. Ken asks if she dodges bullets, and she tells him that the bullets dodge her. She cannot be hurt. The universe will not allow it. She proves it to him. Ken realizes that she kills everyone she meets, but he is still there. Bart says that he must be special too, and they get in the car and drive away.
Right. I mean, she proves it to him in one of the most graphic ways I've ever seen. I mean, she basically plays Russian roulette with herself, taking the revolver, spinning it around, puts it at her head, pulls the trigger, and it doesn't fire. Then she turns the gun around towards the forest, fires the gun, and the bullets come flying out. Yeah. She turns it to herself, and it doesn't fire. And yeah. I mean, like 4 or 5 times, she turns the gun towards her head, and no bullets come out. So it's quite an interesting scene.
She's playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded gun that misfires every time it's pointing at her.
Exactly.
So we learn that Binoculars is a colonel, and he walks into a military briefing room, and he meets his new boss, Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
She tells him how he has failed in his mission of Project Blackwing.
Mm-hmm. Project Blackwing is defined here as the collection of individuals with sensory perceptive capabilities beyond the human scale.
Yes. And she says that there are over 30 dangerous individuals at large. And the colonel tells her that he only has the budget to surveil one. Wilson says Icarus, who now goes by the name of Dirk Gently. She tells the colonel that if he does not bring in all the subjects, they will be eliminated. He tells her that she is overestimating her ability. This revelation, to me, puts this series pretty much similar to Dark Angel.
Mm-hmm.
Where Jessica Alba's character, Max, was in a special military compound and they all escaped and now they're being hunted and tracked down. So they kind of brought this into that, which none of this was in the Douglas Adams work.
No, it was not. Not at all.
So Dirk and Todd bring Farrah to Dirk's apartment. Todd is starting to realize that everything is connected. He is about to tell Dirk that he saw himself earlier when Farrah wakes up, and Todd sees that they know each other. Todd attacks Dirk. So the episode ends with Amanda going to her garage and playing her drums. She watches the Rowdy 3 van as she plays. Then she gives them the finger. So then we get to episode 3, Rogue Wall Enthusiasts. The episode opens flashing back 15 years ago.
And this is where we see Lux de Jour in his original form.
Yes.
Being accosted by two of the bald-headed gentlemen, brought to what looks like Gordon's current home, where the original Gordon is taped up and down on the ground, and there's a woman with a bolt through her chest, and this is the weapon of choice of these bald-headed men. It's sort of electrified crossbow, and we learn that Lux is having an argument with this other woman, referred to as Rainey, and she is considered the supreme soul.
Yes.
And Lux is saying that she can't treat him this badly because he was one of the original souls. But Rainey is determined to transfer Lux's soul into the poor mishap of Gordon.
Yes. Yeah, one of the things that he's yelling at her is that if she cared about the cause, she would have found Edgar Spring's other machine.
Right.
So everybody in this group has the belief that there are two machines. Then they jump to 3 days ago, where Lydia Spring shows up at Gordon Rimmer's door holding mace. She is there because of a letter he wrote saying that he has answers. She wants to know who Zachariah Webb is and what his connection is to her family. What happened to her grandfather? Who killed her mother? Again, more foreshadowing. She goes into his house because he promised her answers. So Dirk, Todd, and Farah go to Gordon's burned house. Dirk says he has his number, and Farah calls it and asks about Lydia Spring. Gordon asks if he has the other machine. They threaten each other. Todd says he wants out and leaves. Dirk and Farah leave together to the Springs estate to get their things. The Colonel is telling the other guy, a complete idiot, and he is so much of an idiot that it's painful, the story of Blackwing and their search for people with special abilities. So this is where they really paint the picture of how dumb the guy I called Rifle was or whatever.
His better name for him would be Fence Post.
Yes.
With a gun.
Yes.
I think we actually do learn his name, but I didn't even write it down.
No. I think we learned that almost in episode 5 or 6, which you might not even have gotten to yet. So Bart is happy to have Ken to talk to. She is learning a lot about the basic workings of the world, and Ken cannot believe that she does not know about all this stuff. More guys on motorcycles come up behind them and shoot out the back window. The car goes off the road. Amanda called Todd to tell him that she's going outside and going to the grocery store, and she is followed by the Rowdy 3 van. At the police station, Estevez brings to Zimmerfield the dog from the tape from the hotel who showed up there. They are all notified that Todd has also arrived. And so they're like, wait up. the dog from the tape at the hotel and Todd, this guy, just happened to show up here at the same time.
Right.
Coincidence? So Dirk and Farah arrive at the Spring Estate, and it is a historic landmark built in the 1880s for inventor Zachariah Webb, who disappeared. In the 1970s, squatters took it over, and Patrick Spring bought it from the government in the mid-1990s, just before his wife died. They meet Patrick Spring's lawyer, and he says he has something for Farah.
Right.
At the police station, Todd is trying to explain what he knows about Lydia Spring. They tell Todd that they know about his not-so-clean history.
Right.
He's been at 3 crime scenes, he had a disease, he sold all his band's equipment and then reported it stolen, he stole the money back from his landlord, and Todd's like, how do you know all this? And they're like, We're detectives.
Right. It's our job to know these things.
Todd gets a call from Amanda. She needs help, so he leaves. At the grocery store, Amanda is having an attack, and she thinks she is on fire. She runs outside, and she falls to the ground, and all the people around her are like, hey, look at the crazy girl, and they're like taping or recording with their phones. And the Rowdy Three come over and kind of clear the crowd out first.
All four of them. Yep. All four of the Rowdy Three.
Yes. And then they hover over her and they feed on her energy. During this, she has visions and she wakes up in her garage as the Rowdy Three are leaving.
Yep, with her bag full of groceries sitting there next to her.
Yes. So we jump to a field where Ken and Bart are stripped to their underwear and they're tied to some sort of pole structure.
Oh my gosh. I love this scene. These next two scenes are some of the best scenes in the show so far,
yes,
in my opinion.
Definitely. Bart tells Ken that all the guys will be killed when they come back. He may or may not make it. That's the way it's supposed to be, but she's going to be fine.
And she hopes that Ken's okay with whatever happens.
Yes.
Because he could be dead soon.
They jump to the lawyer's office where Farrah is with Dirk. And the lawyer gives Farrah an envelope, which he was instructed to give her only if she was in the presence of Dirk Gently.
Right, exactly. And as I said, this is funny, and I know this is a comedy, tragedy, whatever, but this scene in particular touched me. I thought there was some pretty good acting here. I mean,
yes,
the emotions were attached there, and the awkward way that Dirk reacts to the way Farrah was feeling and Dirk's awkward nature, but it really felt sincere, which is what I liked about it.
Right. His there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does sound funny when you say it, but when you see it, it's like, oh, this is pretty well done.
Oh, yeah.
And then we have one of the other few references to Douglas Adams' work.
Okay.
3 questions, 1 answer.
Yes.
The envelope that they are given by the lawyer has 3 questions, 1 answer written on the cover of the envelope.
Yes. So they open up the envelope and they find a map. And they follow a map to a secret room behind a wall in the laundry room. It contains a large piece of electrical equipment and a magic light bulb. There is a note from Patrick Spring that says, "It started here, it ends here, please save her."
But then there's a scene which I swear I've seen it before, and I don't know where. But they're in a room, and Farrah understands that where she needs to be is beyond the current wall that they're standing near. So she starts hammering away at the wall, putting holes in it, and Dirk turns to her and says, "Oh, you hate these walls, do you?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, where have I seen that scene before? It'll never come to me.
I will tell you what it reminded me of, and I am going to say that there's very little chance that this is what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Steve Martin movie, The Jerk, when he's being shot
what I was thinking about. Oh, you hate these cans. That's exactly what I was thinking about. I knew I'd seen that scene somewhere in my head before.
So that I had the same thought.
Oh, that scene is really funny to me. And of course, that's right after he says, "The new phone books are here."
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's hysterical. Yeah, that's where I saw that. That's what I was thinking.
In that last room that they find a crank and a blueprint looking sort of thing, and Dirk takes them. We go back to the field with the motorcycle gang, and they return to burn them at the stake.
Right.
An unpredictable chain of events happens, and Bart kills the gang. Ken survives. He believes he is with Bart for a reason. He realizes it is all real and Bart is who she says she is. They drive away in a motorcycle with a sidecar.
Yeah, that's a good scene.
And it's, I don't want to use the word believable, but plausible. It could kind of, like the guy shoots and the first thing he hits is the cuff that's chaining Bart, and the bullet, again, a lot of ricocheting bullets when you're with Bart.
Right. It hits a post that's got concrete on the top of it that comes down, crashing on someone's head. Yeah,
it's like all kinds of weird stuff like that, but it works out really well.
Yep.
So Todd finally arrives at Amanda's, and she wants to know where Dirk is. She needs to know what happened to her. Todd takes her back to his place, and Dirk and Farah are there. The blueprint-looking thing is a map layer showing an electrical grid. Todd's building is in the center of the map. The neighborhood is called Springsboro. Todd realizes it is all real, and Dirk is who he says he is. I did really like the juxtaposition of one scene after the other where the two characters who are with Dirk and Bart are having the same revelations at the same time.
Right. Yep.
Now, here's something that they threw in, and I'm not quite sure if you caught it or not, but the Colonel shows up and confronts Dirk, but calls him Sflad.
Yep, I did catch that.
And he's like, I don't go by that anymore. And he's trying to persuade Dirk to come back with him for debriefing.
Right.
And this episode ends with Gordon on the phone at the zoo's animal transfer building, and he asks someone to bring a mouse. He gets in the car and hears a news bulletin on the radio about Lux de Jour being found buried under the house that burned down.
So the body is finally found at Gordon's house.
Yes. Episode number 4 is called Watkin. And this opens with a guy who seems to be wearing some sort of welding helmet. Did you have any trouble with it?
The welding helmet?
Yes. The guy could see through it.
Oh, yeah. You're right. I know. I didn't think about that, but you're absolutely right. Well, it was one of those old-fashioned helmets, so it's not like it's one of the newfangled ones that darken when the light gets bright. So the old ones, you had to flip down in front of your face, and they're very dark, very, very dark. It usually had even a special type of stone glass in the bar that was extremely dark. So an old welding helmet like this one was, you would not, in fact, be able to see through it.
Because why would you put it on him if he could see through it? The whole point of this helmet on his head is so he couldn't see where he was going.
Right, exactly. And that would be the case with an old helmet.
Yes. But for some reason, he can see through the lens, and they show his viewpoint, and everything just kind of gets green.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So he is stating that he is an FBI agent. So we learn that this is Weedle. A soul was put into the mouse that he asked for, and then that body was killed. And then they switched Weedle for the soul in the mouse. And Agent Weedle is now one of the operatives, and the mouse with Weedle's soul in it was thrown up against a wall and killed.
Whenever you see one of these body transfer things, I can't help but think about that scene from Futurama where they're transferring the brain, soul, whatever, from one character to another, but you couldn't actually transfer it directly back into the individual that it came from. It had to go through another body first. And I don't know if you ever watched Futurama, but the Harlem Globetrotters were supposedly these incredible mathematicians, and they figured out exactly what kind of exchange it would take to get all 5 of the characters back into the bodies that they originally had.
Okay.
It's pretty funny. But here obviously is where we learn basically that for some reason they have to transfer the soul into an animal before they can transfer it into a body. And
Well, they just want to be able to easily kill it.
right. Well, I guess that makes sense.
You put it in a mouse.
But they always seem to transfer. Well, why do they always transfer the soul into an animal first? They had no plans of killing the corgi.
I do not know why they chose to do Lydia with Rapunzel. I don't know why they did that switch. But my understanding is that they wanted to put Weedle's soul into a mouse so he couldn't fight back.
Okay. Yeah, and then I guess you could use the same logic for putting Lydia's soul into the corgi, because the Lydia's body having the brain of a corgi is not going to give the kidnappers any trouble.
Right.
But I kind of got the impression from the story that it was part of the actual transfer process. It had to go from a human to an animal to back to a human.
It's possible.
And that's why they call it the animal transfer area. You know, that's kind of what I got out of that. But maybe I missed a clue.
It's funny that the biggest discussion we're having about the environment that all this is happening is about this thing here, which really isn't an important part of the plot, but it's one of those things that I was trying to figure out too. I just thought that the animal transfer unit was the part of the zoo that would get animals shipped to and from. Like when it's going from one zoo to another, it would go to the animal transfer unit first. So I just thought that was kind of a play on words. Not that they would always have to do animal transfers, because they put the cat and the hammerhead shark and they kind of switched those. And don't we see sometime in one of these episodes, or maybe you haven't gotten to the episode yet, where they do switch? No, that was the mouse. They switched the guy with the mouse, and then they just immediately shot the guy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know if they have to go through an animal.
Maybe we learn more later. I don't recall all the details of the episodes beyond this one.
Right.
At this point, that was my understanding of what was going on.
Amanda is at Todd's apartment, and Todd hides the lottery ticket behind a picture on a table. Mm-hmm. Dirk and Farah are waiting for him, and Amanda talks Todd into going with them. They are following the map schematic of the power grid, looking for the unlimited energy device, and they are led to a small power shed. Back at the police station, the corrupted Agent Weedle is trying to get some information. And he's acting really weird, but the detectives don't really seem to notice the total weirdness of his manners.
Right.
But they still don't want to give him too much information.
Right.
Especially about the corgi that's in a box under the desk. So back at the power shed, Dirk finds an impression that the handle or crank that he brought fits into. And he cranks it and he falls through a trap door. And Todd falls in right behind him. Agent Weedle then shows up at Todd's apartment, but Todd is not home, so he is willing to stand in the hall and wait. Amanda calls Farah, who is trying to figure out how to get Dirk and Todd out from the underground passage that they fell into. Farah does not like that the FBI agent has broken protocol, so is heading back to help Amanda. And Dirk wants to explore while she is gone. All right, so now we have another whole weird thing that comes together that I'm not quite sure the purpose of this whole relationship. Mm-hmm. So Gordon goes to a bar and he meets his old girlfriend, Sammy, from back when he was Lux du Jour. Her current boyfriend was Nathan, the FBI agent from the hotel who was killed when Weedle was captured. Gordon gives Sammy a present, and it's Lux's yak fur jacket, and he tells her that he can tell her everything.
Right.
So why is there the need for Gordon to meet up with his old girlfriend when he was Lux du Jour, who was now dating this FBI agent who abuses her in the hotel rooms? It just...
Right. Maybe there's a piece you missed. She's not his date. She's his mistress. He's got a wife, and earlier in episode 1, I think it was, you see a conversation between the two FBI agents where they're talking about Samantha, which is Nathan's wife. So this woman that he meets in the bar, that Gordon meets in the bar, is in fact Nathan's mistress. And Nathan has promised to leave his wife for her. And of course, Gordon knows that he is in fact dead.
Yes.
And Gordon, having had a previous life as Lux, knows her as his one true love, is what we're expecting to understand.
Right.
So that's how that all connects. So when we see Nathan leaving, he's having a rendezvous with his mistress at the hotel, and he's basically informing her that he's never going to leave his wife. And while they're at the bar, she's consoling herself with drinks and getting drunk because she now realizes that Nathan will never leave his wife and she'll never be happy. And she's already made it clear to Gordon that she would never date him.
Right. And he's been trying for a long time.
Right. Because, of course, he is Lux and has his memories of having her as a lover, girlfriend, whatever. So that's how that part of the story comes together.
Okay. So we jump back to Dirk and Todd in the passageway, and Dirk is using the magic light bulb from Patrick Spring's lab to see. They come across a door that suddenly opens by itself. It leads to a room full of light bulbs that suddenly come on. Now the walls start closing in, and Dirk yells that they are going to be crushed and burned like Watkin in Star Wars.
I did love that reference.
So there's a bunch here. Watkin is the title of the episode. And the name is taken from one of the guests around the table at the Coleridge dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And I am sure that everybody thought of Star Wars trash compactor scene when they saw this scene.
Right, right.
And I'm not sure why they needed to mention Watkin.
So that it wasn't too directly related to the franchise, so they didn't have to pay him any money.
Yeah, I guess.
Just close enough that they could get away with it, you know?
Yes. So they think they have solved the puzzle to stop the compactor from compacting, and they found an empty socket and they put the bulb in it, and they used it as a knob to open a door to escape into another chamber. And they proceed to look for another door.
Right. And I couldn't help but think of Starship Titanic and the door that was ajar.
Oh, yes. Yes. So Farrah shows up at Todd's, and she knows that there is something wrong with the agent. But he is able to turn the tables on her psychologically, bringing up her lack of advancement due to mental health issues. He leaves and waits in the car outside. When he eventually leaves, the Rowdy Three arrive. Back with Dirk and Todd, they get closed in another room with a pedestal, and this one has a large rhino horn in the middle and a small rhino on the door and a tiny hole where the horn should be.
And I keep laughing because it's like, how many more phallic references can they have here?
There is a plaque on the floor by the pedestal, which when pushed, releases the image of a rhinoceros, the same way Lydia Spring's face came out of the corgi, which was this rhinoceros, which then ran around the room and shocking them and knocking them down. They figured out this puzzle that they need to do an escape room human chain to connect the horn of the rhino to the hole in the rhino on the door. And then when they push the plaque and the electricity goes through them into the door of which it opens. And of course, in the next room, there is a wall of monitors with images and numbers. And Dirk plays a matching game and solves the puzzle. Farrah is trying to phone Dirk and Todd and gets no answer. Amanda thinks she is starting to have an episode because she smells fire. But Farrah smells smoke too. And there is smoke coming out of the grass next to the building. They go to the basement and they hear Dirk and Todd screaming on the other side of the wall. The Rowdy Three arrive and break down the wall and feed off of Dirk's energy. Hearing the story, Amanda realizes that the vision that she has when she has an attack is of the map Dirk and Todd saw on the screens.
Mm-hmm.
So the giant array of televisions briefly showed a map, and Amanda has this vision. So she uses the crank that Dirk has to open up a wall and reveal another wall of screens with the map.
Mm-hmm.
One monitor says, "Save her, Dirk and Todd." So, again, that's got to be a little bit freaky to be going through all of this stuff and seeing messages left for you.
Right. Obviously, the scene with the electric rhino is a really
Yes.
funny scene, and I keep going over it in my mind because at one point, as they're leaving, Todd turns to Dirk and makes some offhand comment about how they just saved each other's lives, and Dirk says, "I don't even like coffee." It's a random statement, like he has no clue what they're talking about. It just tickled me. I do like the Rowdy Three, all four of them.
Yes. Yeah. And this episode ends back at the animal transfer unit,
Mm-hmm.
where Gordon shows Sammy all of Lux's things and explained what happened to Lux. He is telling his people he is giving up what Lux wanted and taking back control. He then kills Sammy by smashing her over the head with a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to end part 1 of the Dirk Gently TV series.
Right.
Season 1.
Right. Fourth episode, and it was good. I mean, it was really good. And I think we made the point earlier that it diverges so much from the Dirk Gently written material that we have some issues of credulity.
Yes.
About whether or not it should be considered a Dirk Gently story. And here at the end, I was a little puzzled by this. I do understand the motivation where Lux is trying to say to his compatriots that he no longer has the same desires as he did before, so he can go on with whatever the mission is that they're trying to accomplish, and kills his previous mistress with the guitar. But it seemed gratuitous and unnecessary, you know?
Yeah.
But at least it closed the loop. You know, that's kind of the way these things tend to work.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to go forward. As I said before, I think I've seen all these episodes at some time. It would have been many, many years ago, obviously, at this point. But I have thoroughly enjoyed this. And probably partly because it's new material. And don't we love to see new material?
Yes, we do. And I've said this probably every episode, but I guess I'm really enjoying watching shows, listening to radio programs, or reading books with a purpose, as opposed to for entertainment.
Right.
You get so much more out of it. I don't want to say it's a chore, but it takes a concerted effort to sit down and watch this show, knowing that I have to summarize everything, and I hope it makes sense. And if it doesn't, then watch the show, and some of this will come back to you and go, "Oh, that's what he was talking about."
And isn't it interesting? I mean, here we've talked about episodic TV, and we've talked about Dirk Gently, and we've talked about Douglas Adams's stories. And like I mentioned before, when you read the story of The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul, you see a darker side of Douglas Adams. You see darker creation to his character development, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And everyone who has done an adaptation of it have spun that around. You know, they've taken it back around to a place where Douglas Adams might not have gone, but we do enjoy because we like the lighter side.
Yes.
As you and I became fans, we started with the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and most of that is lighter side.
Yes. So not dark comedy.
No, not dark comedy. I do have to say I'm really enjoying this, and I'm looking forward to what's next, Jeff.
Well, what's next is going to be Part 2 of the BBC America Dirk Gently 2016 Season 1 TV show.
Wow, a mouthful.
We're going to do the last 4 episodes.
Excellent.
And speaking of a mouthful, the title of episode 5 is Very Erectus.
Do you really expect me to respond to that?
No, but
it is the BBC after all, right?
Yes.
Even if it is the American version.
Yeah. So that's just where I'm going to end it.
You're not even going to say, this is the end.
There is a plaque on the floor by the pedestal, which, when pushed, released an electric lightning rhino, and they were knocked down.
You want to say that again? An electric lightning rhino.
Yes. You don't like electric lightning rhino?
Oh, it's the most common thing you expect.
Thank you for listening to this. A new episode is released on the first Thursday of every month. A special thank you goes out to Luke, Max, Greg, and Tim Lesnick for arranging and performing our opening theme. Visit our website at digitalwatchesareaprettyneatidea.buzzsprout.com. While there, you can find links to all of my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy inspired t-shirt designs. You can contact us via email at digitalwatchespodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook at Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea. You can message us on Twitter, or should I say X, at Watches Idea, and our Instagram is Watches Idea Podcast.
This has been a Foods for Thought production.